Hey everyone, welcome to the Digital Remodeler podcast. I'm glad you've chosen to join us today. And with me is Nathan Svoboda. He is the president of Wichita Home Works in Wichita, Kansas. Nathan, good to have you with us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit of your story. You've had really phenomenal, explosive growth in your history, but let's kind of start from the beginning. Where did you start from? And we'll kind
Sure.
of talk through your journey a little bit.
Yeah. Went to school, did the college thing, got a business degree, came out of college knowing that I wanted to do my own thing, run my own company. Didn't know exactly what industry that was going to be in yet. But I started kind of doing some research. I actually initially wanted to start a diesel repair business, and I actually built, a complete business plan for that, and then even went through the finances and kind of figured out what I thought I needed to get that off the ground because it was a big, capital expenditure up front. So once I had that number, I was like, well, now I gotta come up with that money. And so the one thing I knew from just growing up around it and all that sort of thing was remodeling and home improvement type projects. So I got started with that as a means to hopefully fund the other, and got started into that. Got a couple decent sized projects. Ended up uh, realizing that, yeah, maybe this was what I was more cut out to be. It's what I knew best. And so that kind of took off from there. And we just started building off of our successes that we had through that.
Fantastic. So when you started out, was it just you? Did you have anybody else? How did you actually get started?
Yeah, so first off was just me. So I was doing sales calls, the marketing, the estimating, the project management. I didn't have a solid, pool of subcontractors or suppliers yet. And it also didn't help that I originally was born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so I had just moved down here 2, 3 years prior to starting Wichita Home Works. So didn't get a whole lot of time to make connections and whatnot to be able to start the business. So it was a lot of work.
Excellent. So kind of take us, from those beginning phases. What's the journey look like up to this point?
Sure. Yeah, from the very start, my goal was to do quality work, and I didn't want to start like a lot of other companies do, where they start as kind of a single trade contractor, and then they find out, well, I can't do roofing, during the winter months, and so they add, bathroom remodels to it and that sort of thing. I always knew I wanted to do the high end, remodel projects from the start. So started marketing towards that. Got, I can remember my first main floor kitchen remodel that was pretty good size. Took a lot of time to make sure I was attentive to detail, the quality of work, and the experience of the customer was my first priority for the first, couple of years. That was a bigger priority than the money was, and it's done well now to date, because we were able to build that reputation to get our foot in the door for the higher end remodels. So went from just me to adding in my dad was actually my second employee, and then it just started kind of building from there. I started essentially replacing myself in each position as we went, and I was able to keep growing our pool of subcontractors. I was able to get busy enough that we hired a couple in-house remodel craftsmen, um, and yeah, um, kept rolling with it from there. So today we have, I think, 12 administrative staff, 3 estimators, 3 project managers, 2 designers. Um, so yeah, quite the quite the journey.
Yeah, quite the journey. So let's talk a little bit about how you uh, grew. You talked about bringing on your dad. I know at one point you decided to bring in a partner.
Hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about that. At what point did you decide you needed somebody else um alongside of you instead of just doing it yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I think we were probably 4, maybe 5 years in, and got to the point where, it was, I was still putting in, long, long hours, throughout the week. Wasn't really able to turn things off. And, we actually started working with a subcontractor. His name was Doug, and just started using him for projects. Started working with him more and more, and eventually got to know him pretty well. Good guy, good, same values in business and personal life. And so we just started kind of, we both saw opportunities in each other's skill sets. And so we started just working off of those and building off of those. We went from him being a subcontractor to together we started like a kind of more of a handyman or smaller project type thing where we were partners in it. And then that kind of rolled into him always helping with the production side of things with Homeworks. And now today we because I was able to, he was able to join us and really add to the team and add to the growth. Now we have sister companies even alongside Wichita Homeworks that I most likely wouldn't have been able to do had I not had a partner in it. So
Okay,
a
perfect.
little bit smaller piece of the pie, but a lot bigger pie now.
Perfect. So now let's talk about, you started out, you did good quality work. Um, how did you make people aware of the kind of work you're doing? What's been kind of the key to, getting into that higher end market?
Hmm. So from the very beginning, referrals are always great. They're they technically don't cost a whole lot, and they hold a lot of weight with the people that are being referred. The hard part with referrals is they take a long time to build and to for that to really take off and become what your business is sustained by. So from the very start, I took advantage of just making sure that I was gathering content from our projects in the way of photos, videos, that sort of thing. And I always made sure that I was also a part of those so that I could build that, know, like, and trust, even with people that I hadn't actually met in person. But then also just utilizing social media to then put that content out to everyone so that they could see. And for the first part, I started, just doing kind of the grassroots. You could almost call it, guerrilla marketing. I'd go on there and, follow a bunch of people so that you would get reciprocal follows. And I'd like a whole bunch of pages and then go back and unlike them. And I don't know, I may have been part of the reason they've cracked down so hard on a lot of that stuff. But I tried to utilize the free methods as much as possible. But then as I continued to build my team and I was able to take on more, we grew our capacity and our skill set. Then, we started spending money on it as well. But, working with you guys with Simplicity has been great because it's definitely a holistic, uh, marketing plan, looking at it from all angles instead of just finding someone that just is worried about Google ads and just Facebook ads, that sort of thing. I think it definitely comes back to just all the different areas that people are seeing us. That combined notoriety is what really has helped us grow.
Okay, good. So really having this in your mind, having this ever presence everywhere you
Yep.
go, there you are,
Yep.
type mixture.
Yeah,
Excellent.
if I can put a profile up on anything out there, we've done everything from Angie's List to, some of the big box stores have referral sites and all that sort of thing. Our goal is just to be out there everywhere we can be.
Excellent. So you bring up an interesting, point of conversation. A lot of, business owners struggle with wanting to spend money on their advertising.
Mhm.
And, as you've looked at your marketing over the years, how have you, made peace with that there is an expenditure that you're going to put out there? How do you view that? How could you help another, contractor really view marketing in the bigger picture?
Yeah, so for sure, I think it was probably a more general um, aspect of the business that I learned that really has helped with all of that. So I learned, you know, well, it feels like too late always, but I learned that the numbers really did matter and the costs of things, and knowing my actual numbers within the business was a huge part of our success. So same goes for the first place I started with that was just within the projects, knowing each project, what did we spend on labor, what did we spend on materials, were there any what things did I miss in the estimate for next time. Once I started knowing all of those details, I was able to get better at it. So same thing with marketing. Um, until you are actually able to track your expenditure with it, it can sometimes feel like you're just, kind of shooting out in the dark, and really you are. So I think one of the biggest things is just from the start, track your results. And for us, we track that on a regular basis. I can see exactly what our top producing lead sources are and how much profit we've made from those. So I'm able to take what I've spent on that and compare it to what we've earned from it and get a real, simple return on investment.
Good. And this is another question you can give a lot of insight into. How long do you think a contractor should run a marketing program to determine its effectiveness? So, you start ads on a certain platform. How long
Mhm.
do you think that needs to run?
Man, there's honestly some platforms that I think you could argue a year might be a little early. Just the way that, SEO ranking and all of that, all of those algorithms that the different search platforms utilize to rank. For sure, I would say, 3 to 6 months, probably leaning more towards the 6 months. Just that gives you time to go in there, put something in place, make the adjustments, for a few months. Usually, I find that it's a little difficult to, um, really compare a smaller time frame than like a full month, but also just due to our industry, contracting seems to be very cyclical throughout the year. So if you don't get a good, cross section of the year and the just ebbs and flows of it, you could potentially be seeing things that aren't really there. So yeah, I would say 6 months for sure. I think a year can honestly be very beneficial because then you see the full cycle.
Excellent. Let's talk through, the business growth, a little more. So, you started out, it was you, your first hire was your dad. How did you determine what your next hire should be? How have you made those determinations along the way?
Really it came down to what area I was seeing that needed the most improvement, as well as what was, taking the most of my time and effort. and just seeing, where we need that improvement, and then going out and finding the right person for that, that kind of almost specialized in that area. Then I was able to plug them in and see the improvement in that area. So really, I just kind of measured it on myself, like where am I spending the most time? What is the most frustrating to me? Because let's face it, not everyone can be, perfect at every aspect of the business. And so that's really where I started.
Good. So kind of going through your journey, what would you say was the first, I'm going to call it, reset point that you had to hit in your growth, where you
Yeah.
grew, started banging your head against the ceiling maybe a little bit, and you had to maybe pull back and retool, and then let's kind of talk through that process.
Yeah. So I would definitely say, after the first year, I was able to look back on, how the year went, and it gave me a chance to kind of sit back and make some adjustments, that I think were necessary for sure. But then I think around the 3 year mark also, kind of hit another point where it's like, hey, we're making good money, but there's still these large issues that we're dealing with. Um, and then I would say probably the 6 or 7 year mark. Although for us, that aligned perfectly with the whole COVID thing, um, which, we utilized to make some of the, hard decisions that needed to happen. And it really caused a point for us to really have to look at things and restructure and make sure that, we're running way more efficient. So
Absolutely. So just to kind of timestamp those, so at the 1 year mark, about where were you revenue wise?
we are at about 1 million
Okay.
after the first year. That
And
first year,
then
yep.
3 years, where would you have been?
3 years we were almost knocking on 3 million.
Okay.
And
And
then
then year six, year seven, about where were you?
yeah, so then we were between about 4 and 5 million
Okay.
during those years. So,
And
and
then,
that's where really that, like the 4 to 8 year mark. That's where it seems like the real work really hits. It's easy right up front to just, do what you got to do to try and squeeze out, some profit, but then to actually put things in place to make them sustainable and repeatable, that's that 4 to 8 years. That's where it really it takes work.
okay, well, let's dive into that because you brought that up. So what is the work, as you kind of assess that 4 to 8 year mark for
Yeah,
you, what was the real hard work that you really had to do to keep the business growing?
sure. So number one was figuring out, my actual numbers and being able to track those consistently. Number two would be getting the right people on board, and building the right team. There were a lot of times where I hired people that I really liked them personally and still do to this day, but they just weren't a fit for either the company or for the position, that sort of thing. So that was an important part. And then also just building systems and processes, standard operating procedures that govern how we do things in the future so that when we do something well, when something does go well, then we can replicate that, and keep doing it.
Excellent. And then this last segue we'll get into, you mentioned this earlier, you've been able to diversify
Hmm.
and leverage what you've done with Wichita Home Works to really start into some other entrepreneurial ventures.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that. How did you determine when was the right time? How have you assessed other ventures that maybe you wanted to be a part of? Well, kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah. So I would say necessity was probably the biggest driving force behind all of them. So, for instance, our trades business that largely came out of a necessity for good quality subcontractors for our remodel work. It was always hard to find, and then when we did find them, it was always hard to keep a spot in their queue and to get kind of their um, priority, when we needed something. And so, we met good people within that industry as we continued to do business, and just reached out to them and started putting together other partnerships. But also like our real estate investing business, that one kind of comes from just our own competitive advantage that we've built through the remodel side of things. As the management of rental properties and that sort of thing is really where you can make or break the investment. And we've always had a unique opportunity to pull from the employees and the systems that we have in place to be able to manage our own properties and make a little bit more profit.
Excellent. And just out of curiosity, would you consider yourself an entrepreneur first, or would you consider yourself a remodeler second?
Yeah, no, definitely entrepreneur first.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always been chasing my own adventures in terms of entrepreneurship. So
Perfect. Well, as we wrap up, so I'm going to ask you if you were speaking to the new contractor just starting out, what's the one or two pieces of advice you'd give them?
oh boy. Um I would definitely say be very slow to spend money, and especially cash. And along with that would be, put off debt as long as you can. Debt is definitely a very important tool, and it can help, leverage, but so many times I see you essentially you have to be able to feel the pain of your mistakes up front, so that you actually make you actually improve those areas that caused the mistake. And a lot of times debt can be used as like a pain reliever uh for mistakes made. And so I've seen it before, people, oh, I want to start a contracting business, so they go out and buy a brand new truck, the brand new trailer, all new tools, all that sort of thing. um, that was definitely something I put all of those things off, and it went well for us. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things.
Good. Now let's kind of shift gears and let's talk to that contractor that they've been at that million and a half mark for a while. They'd like to get to 3 million, 5 million beyond. What's your advice to them? What's the one or two things you would say to them?
I think the biggest thing that holds people back is that fear to hand over those responsibilities and to essentially multiply your efforts. So usually you see, guys that are stuck at those marks, they're usually still, doing the large majority of the work within their business. And it depends on the type of person you are. I was always the sales type, going out, making connections, networking. That's really where I excel. And so I had to free myself up from the other, responsibilities so that I could go do that. So I think it's important. Not everyone has to be that marketer or networking person, but you have to find what you're best at, and free yourself up so that you can do just that, and spend your time on the things that really do the most for your business. And the things that you aren't as good at, you need to go out and find somebody that is better than you at it and rely on them and pay them to do it.
Excellent. And then the final place is, now that you're at the level you're at, what are some of the things that you're focused on moving forward? So what are you going to be doing to take your business to the next level?
I'm still every day I'm essentially working to fire myself. I'm trying to remove myself and what I have to do from, as many aspects of the business as possible. And not because I don't want to actually, have to show up to work or anything like that, but so that my role in it is less, you know, pertinent to the success of it. That gives me the freedoms that I, really, that's why I signed up to do this, is so that someday I'd have the freedom of time and money to be able to do my own things.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all your insights today. Any final thoughts that you want to give our audience?
The only thing I can say is, entrepreneurship isn't necessarily for everyone, and I've had experiences that have gone really well with partners. And I've had, experiences that didn't go as well. And it really comes down to whether or not you've got that drive and that passion to keep going, even when all the numbers say that, you're not going to make it. Because I know I've come to that multiple times.
Good. And Nathan, if people want to learn more about you, Wichita Home Works, where can they go?
Yeah, you can check us out online, wichitahomeworks.com. And we're also very active across all social media. So more than happy to talk with anyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Digital Remodeler podcast.